Good afternoon and welcome to the episode of the Ad Drop Podcast. I'm your host, Terrance Biggs. Well, we now know the everything with the college football playoff, but there's so much to discuss. As always, with me is the managing editor of Last Word on College Football. Also, the best writer that anyone will ever know, my man Tony Siracusa. Tone, how you doing, my man?
I'm doing well, T. Biggs. How are you?
I'm all right.
It's cold out here in Charlotte. This is like second week in a row I've worn a sweatshirt. It got to freezing temps overnight. I'm like, I realized some of my sweatshirt shows, so I may as well reveal the rest of it. It says, "Sorry, can't football. Bye."
Oh, I love that. Yes.
My daughter and wife got it for me for my birthday. It's like, all right, that's pretty much my life this time of year.
Here we've had, by the time Saturday rolls around, we will have 11 inches of snow in the last week.
See, it doesn't really snow here. I think we got a couple days of snow last year, and that was the first time in the whole time we've lived here. So it doesn't snow often, but it freezes overnight. And yeah, I'm inside, I'm in the house, and the heat's on, but it's still cold, you know? It just has that cold vibe.
Yeah, that chill. Thursday and
Hmm.
Friday is supposed to be a high of 10 and a low of -5.
No, thank you. No, thank you. I'll pass. Hard pass.
Now, when we look at before we get into the CFP and everything,
Yeah.
Troy Aikman, I forgot to mention this during the when we were
Hmm.
discussing before.
Yeah.
Troy Aikman, who apparently will not be contributing to NIL because he says that he didn't even receive a thank you. That now, as someone who follows the UCLA program, who has also covered it, is that just seem like more of sour grapes from Troy, or is it something deeper?
I think it's not just the thank you. I think it's the player didn't stay. The player that he specifically contributed to transferred out. So if you do the math, if you look at the calendar, if you kind of backfill the data, it was Dante Moore, the now Oregon quarterback. Um, and it was here's the thing. I don't care that Troy is hurt. This isn't the way NIL was supposed to be. Random booster writing a check to random player with no deliverables. NIL is supposed to be I pay you as this person and you do these advertising or marketing or promotional things for me and then you get paid. There's a back and forth deliverable. This was just writing a check to a kid so the collective didn't have to pay him. I'm sorry Troy got burned, but I don't care because that's
And I
not the
don't
way it's supposed to be anyway.
and I don't fault for the leaving of to head to
No.
Oregon. No.
Oh, God, no. I mean, he and Chip Kelly were oil and water. Dante's grandmother DM'd me quite a few times as he was struggling in the 1 year that he played. Um, Dante's a good quarterback. He's a drop back quarterback. Chip Kelly didn't run a drop back pro style offense. So it was never a good mix to begin with.
First and foremost, we when we look at the CFP and
Hmm.
guess the omission of Notre Dame to me doesn't strike as much as the omission of BYU. I thought that BYU should be in,
Okay.
but Notre Dame was just I, it's not so much their omission, it's their reaction. The petulance of skipping a bowl game, which led to a domino effect of other schools skipping bowl games.
Right.
You use the word, I think you use the word petulant.
Yes. Yes.
I
They are.
agree.
They're being
Like,
petulant.
on what planet is that? Like, they have players who might not play in the NFL who that would end up being their last game. How do you deprive them of that?
Well, and I think what stand is it that you think you're taking? I keep seeing people say, "Oh, they're taking a principled stand." Are they really? Because here's my thing on this. When it comes to and I can see a case can be made for BYU. I wouldn't be making it not after the way they got just blown out in the conference championship game, but a case can certainly be made. I mean, two-loss team and been in the top 15 all year. That's fine. Um, But in this, to me, everybody's wrong. Everybody. The committee is wrong. Jim Phillips is wrong. The ACC is wrong. Notre Dame is wrong. Everybody's wrong. I'm looking for people who are right, and I can't find them, other than me and you.
Hey,
Look, and I apologize for the noise and the beeping. The city of Charlotte has decided that they haven't torn up these streets in a while, so they're doing new water lines. That's what happens when you live in the city of Charlotte. If the city isn't tearing crap up, then they think they're not doing their job. Look, I think the committee failed because for 4 weeks they wouldn't address Notre Dame and Miami and Notre Dame. There were teams in between them, so nothing to address, right? Notre Dame was ranked higher, and this is important. Notre Dame was ranked higher in all of those weeks where they would do the weekly conference call, the weekly reveal. But they said you can't compare them head to head because they're not. There's other teams in between. And then you and I talked last week, and we had just had that Tuesday conference call, which was the second to last one. And we talked about how opaque they were and their answers to everything. And I think I said then, this feels like they're leaving themselves wiggle room to do whatever they see fit on that last Sunday. That's exactly what they did, because all of a sudden they took on a mandate that they essentially gave themselves. I don't know how much it was Hunter Yurachek to rewatch the Miami Notre Dame game from September, and watching all the conference championship games in order to relitigate Miami Notre Dame. They now rewatched the game from 2 months ago. What are you doing? Since when do we do that? And they neither team was playing last weekend. And somehow, I've seen people post the record of the teams that Notre Dame beat and said that it's a losing record overall. That's fine. I'm not even going to argue that you're wrong. But then the committee should not have had Notre Dame ahead of Miami the entire 2 months. Then it should have been because to have Notre Dame ahead and then with no new details, nothing new between those two teams to leapfrog Miami over is ridiculous. Absolutely absurd. Notre Dame's 2 losses came to Texas A&M and Miami, 2 ranked teams. Miami's came to Louisville and SMU, neither one of them ranked. So that's got to be a difference. You can't pull this at the end, because you've got teams that didn't play but are getting punished, or a team that didn't play and is getting punished. Meanwhile, Alabama gets hammered in the SEC conference game, is a 3-loss Alabama, and doesn't drop. And part of what Yurachek said in Sunday's conference call was he was really impressed going on the road to beat Auburn. A 5-7 Auburn team that allowed Alabama to stay where they are. I really don't have a problem with Miami being there. I have a problem with them being there and Notre Dame not being there and Alabama being in. That's my biggest problem. Their thing was, well, you can't punish someone for losing in the conference championship game because they got there. Well, you punished BYU. So of course you can. You either can or you can't. I don't care which it is, because I think we need to get rid of the conference championship games anyway. But you either are going to punish them for losing that or not. You're not going to punish some but not others. I think the ACC has culpability in this. They played the Notre Dame Miami game on virtually an endless loop Thursday through Sunday. Now, do I think the committee members are watching the ACC network? No, I think barely anybody's watching the ACC network. but not the point. It was clearly a promotional effort on behalf of Miami. And the ACC posted a side-by-side comparison of the two. Look, your conference champion was Duke. And we talked about this last week. If your tiebreak system was viable at all, the game would have been Virginia versus Miami. But it's a cockamamie system that put Duke in there. And so after the game, we're listening to Manny Diaz going about how Duke should be in the playoff at 8-5 because the ACC champion should always be in. Look, and I give Manny credit. Manny was answering the questions, and we can talk about that later. The press conference the day before when Tony Elliott got really emotional over one of my questions, and Manny Diaz did a great job of talking specifically about where the system is broken. But Jim Phillips was like, well, we owe it to our full-time member, not our part-time affiliate. Because, Notre Dame is a football affiliate, but they are a member in all the other sports, or most of the other sports. They are an actual member of the ACC. When you go to ACC Media Days, they've got the big banner behind the stage. It's a digital banner, but you get the point. And it's got the logo of all the schools there. Notre Dame's logo is right there, even though it's football media days, because they are a member of the conference, except in football. And I heard a lot of ACC people barking out about how the ACC saved Notre Dame in 2020. If you remember, because of COVID, schools were sticking to just limited conference schedules. Notre Dame, being an independent, wasn't going to really have much of a schedule. And they got an ACC schedule out of it. They played one out of conference game, and then the rest was ACC. Wound up going undefeated in regular season play. They lost the conference championship game to Clemson. Then, if I recall, since they didn't make the playoffs, they went to the Rose Bowl and lost to, I'm going to say Alabama. I think that's right. But anyway, that the ACC saved them. Really? Let's take the other path. Let's say you didn't give them a full schedule. Let's say, and it was a 9 or 10 game schedule because several of them got canceled because of COVID. Let's say you didn't. What would have happened to Notre Dame? I think Notre Dame would have survived. May not have played football in 2020, but Notre Dame football would have come back in 2021. They wouldn't have been extinct. They wouldn't have gone the way of the dodo bird because it's freaking Notre Dame football. The ACC needs Notre Dame more than Notre Dame needs the ACC, right? The ACC, I think we can all agree, is number 4 in the Power 4 conferences. They need Notre Dame worse than Notre Dame needs them. So this thing, and Phillips was kind of cornered over all of this. And then Notre Dame. Look, you bailed out on the Pop-Tarts Bowl by being petulant. Yeah, the word I used when we were chatting for a few minutes before the show. It is. You're throwing a temper tantrum. We're going to take our ball and go home. Look, man, I realize you're Notre Dame and you got donors and you got this and you got that. These bowl games, and I realize now it's become popular to say, well, the bowl games will be gone soon. No, they won't. There may be a paring down of the number of bowl games, which I'm fine with that. But the Pop-Tarts Bowl in Orlando pays $6 million per school. You're now $6 million short this year. I don't want to hear about money issues, and I'm sure you won't have money issues. But when you're clamoring about the money of big-time sports, I don't want you walked away from $6 million. And maybe that's what makes you think you took a principled stand. You walked away from $6 million. Okay, but you know what? The guys who are second and third on the depth chart going into spring camp, lost out on 2 extra weeks of practice allowed under the bowl system. The players lost out on experience, like you said at the start of this. Guys who aren't going to play at the next level lost out on this experience. It was petty. It really was. And then you get Pete Bavacqua, the athletic director, who goes on the Dan Patrick show saying the ACC has permanently damaged the relationship with Notre Dame because of what they did. And for context purposes, Bavacqua said what he said before Jim Phillips said what he said. Phillips was really kind of in response to Bavacqua. And Bavacqua said, that he's not mad at Miami because Miami didn't do anything other than just accept the playoff bid. But that it raised a lot of eyebrows and that the conference was taking shots at Notre Dame by doing it the way we did it. He said they didn't appreciate being singled out repeatedly with the digital media thing that the ACC did and so on. And then, so I think, they're wrong in this with their temper tantrum. And then Brett Yormark from the Big 12 felt the need to insert himself. Apparently, if you like being heard from, this is the time to chime in. This is the topic to chime in on. Maybe Lane Kiffin. Things have been too quiet for Lane lately, so we'll hear from him too, just for the hell of it. Yeah, he vented against Notre Dame and called their behavior egregious and said Bavacqua was totally out of bounds with the approach. Said and so there's that. I will say this, because you know where I was Monday night at the Bronco Nagurski dinner. Most teams send assistant coaches with the players, with the finalists who are there. There are 4 finalists. They send position coaches or the defensive coordinator or whatever. But for Leonard Moore, Marcus Freeman was there at the dinner. And I got to tell you, man, the guy had the look of fear on his face all night, like he was afraid someone was going to want to talk to him about this. He made an exit after so fast. The players are hanging around taking pictures with people and taking pictures with each other. And, the parents are there and they're hanging out. And, people are just kind of chilling for a little bit. There are a lot of people there. I think they said the attendance was 1,200 people at this thing. And some of them are college football people. Some of them are just, some wackadoodles like me who are there, taking up space. But you can actually buy tickets to this thing also. You're told, black tie affair. You can tell the people who bought tickets because they look like they came in a suit straight from the office instead of putting on the black tie. But there's a reason they're also sitting in the back of the room. But point being, everyone's hanging around. Marcus Freeman hit that exit, man, like, he was, running through an airport in the old days, like the Hertz commercials with OJ, right? And my wife says, where the hell's he going so fast? It's not like he's got a team that he's got to prepare for postseason play. What's he got to do that's so urgent? And he just looked like, please, no one talk to me. I don't know why you went then, but, it was nice of you to go and support more. But if you were so afraid of that, maybe do something else instead. It was an unfortunate appearance by Marcus Freeman. It was not a good look for him. And then the last thing from the Notre Dame end is we have now found out that they have canceled a book signing by Ivan Maisel, who wrote a well-chronicled book on former Notre Dame coach Frank Leahy. And he's been doing the media tour, and he was supposed to have a book signing, I believe, on Friday of this week. Ivan Maisel's on the committee. And so Notre Dame, just before you and I took to air, canceled the book signing. Look, man, you're punishing Ivan Maisel just for existing on the committee. You don't know how he voted. Maybe he voted to put Notre Dame on and was outvoted. You don't know. You've just decided to punish anyone associated with the committee. That's just childish, man. Grow up. Be Notre Dame, would you? Grow up.
It's the assumption of entitlement. Like, yes, I mean, like you said,
Mhm.
Alabama shouldn't have been in, and my issue is with the committee as a whole. When I look at the people who comprise the committee, Hunter
Uh-huh.
Yurchek is is an active AD.
Mhm.
His predecessor at Arkansas, Jeff Long, is now a member too.
Mhm.
Wesley Walls, the former Mississippi tight end, played with the Panthers. Why is he there? Like, what? It just, Yurchek might be one of the worst spokesmen for a committee
Right.
that I've ever seen. Like, just
And
deer in
the
headlights.
chair before Yurchek was Mac Rhodes, an active AD at the time. He's not anymore, which is also why he's not in the committee. But yeah, totally agree. They shouldn't, and we've said this before, they shouldn't have active ADs. Absolutely should not.
I think the committee should be made up of no one with any type of allegiance to any school. Like, if you are a
Right.
former AD, chances are, if you retire from that job, you might be receiving a nice pension from that job. I think it should be made up of national reporters
Mm,
because they have to see everything. They have to report on games.
mm,
Or just the whole ESPN
yes.
menage, just the whole presence from people made a big deal of Heather Adenich making faces during the announcements and stuff. And I just, one, why is the camera on her reaction?
Right.
Like, why?
Right.
Like, that was done purposely of whoever was producing that. They knew. Like,
And by the
it's
way, her shocked reaction came at Alabama still being in.
yep.
That was that reaction that made the rounds on social media. That came as a result of Alabama still being in.
Yep. And that, I mean, Alabama still being in probably keeps Kalen DeBoer's seat from being less hot for a second
Sure. Sure.
until
Yeah,
next year when they lose
I don't think
twice.
they're gonna I don't think they're gonna beat Oklahoma, but we'll get to that, I know, later on in other shows when we start looking at the matchups and stuff. But yeah, you're right. I mean, Kalen DeBoer can now put that back, because they got hammered by Georgia. Hammered. Look, I'm with you. I'm okay. There's a part of me that's okay with former coaches being on as long as they are still not getting their buyout or anything like that from a school. And I say I'm okay with it because most coaches don't have one job. They've had 2 or 3 or 4 jobs. So it's hard to say, well, his allegiance is to this school or that school. He's been all over the place. Um, as long as they're still not collecting money, because I think you have to have some football, I guess what we would call football insiders. And they're gonna watch the games differently than do you and I. But I go back to the active athletic directors and something we talked about last week. Monday through Thursday, their job is to go tend to the baseball team and the women's softball team and the track and field team and whatever at school. Then on Friday, they hop on a plane to Grapevine, Texas, watch the games on Saturday, and fly back on Sunday. And then on the last week, they're in Grapevine longer as they have their deliberations and whatever. I was talking to some media people on Monday, and they were like, "If you can't watch as many games as we do, you shouldn't be on the committee," which is what you and I have been saying all along. If you can't watch the number of games that we do, and you're just watching the selected games on Saturday, you and I are watching games, recorded games all through. I literally make sure I'm done by the time you and I record on Wednesday, because by then I've had to place my weekly votes for whatever awards and so on. And I want to make sure that I'm buttoned up when I come on your show. If you can't commit to 20 plus games per week, you shouldn't be on the committee. And these guys don't. They watch, and as the season goes along, I can understand them narrowing their scope. They don't need to watch, I don't know, Florida State versus, West Virginia because it's not pertinent to the poll. I get that. That's fine. But you still need to do a better job of taking in the sport and rewatching a game that you watched 2 months ago and watching it again, but from a different scope, from a different perspective, is really screwed up.
We mentioned 100-yard trick a couple of times, and for me, the ability to watch games. I mean, this is a man who runs the Arkansas program, where John Calipari is his head basketball coach, who commands a ton of attention. They have a really
Right.
good baseball team. They have a really good track and field, indoor and
Mhm.
outdoor. There is no
Yep.
way on this earth he's sitting there watching as many games as he should.
Well, I was on Monday, we had the black tie dinner that night. During the day, there was a luncheon, which I was invited to for the first time, and was sitting at the table with Ron Nagurski, who is Bronco Nagurski's grandson, and Sorel Nagurski, who is the great grandson of Bronco Nagurski. I was sitting with Bill Bender from the Sporting News. And we were talking about the system and the way it works. And without fail, all of them, even the Nagurski family, were like, I don't get how you have active athletic directors deciding who goes to the playoff. I don't get how that's supposed to work. And apparently not well, but, because you get in this situation. And there was a thinking, and I agree with it, that the timing is a little too coincidental, that the deadline to decide on the format for next year was December 1st. They couldn't come to an agreement on the format for next year in order to tell their media partners. And so they gave themselves an extra 5 weeks. It's now mid-January. Then you have all this blow up of Notre Dame being left out or BYU being left out. You just absolutely guaranteed they're going to expand the playoff for next year. They gave themselves all this extra time to deliberate at a time when this is the hot topic, more so than the bowl games or the playoff themselves. This is it. This is the topic right now. Pretty much guaranteed they're going to expand next year now, which I'm against.
Yeah, it's too much now.
There aren't 16 teams who can win the national championship.
No, there's like 8.
Cinderella's fun for March Madness because it's 5 guys, 7 guys, 8 guys maybe total in the playing rotation, and you get hot shooting and you can do a lot of things. Football isn't the same. It's not the same thing. Do I think Tulane can beat Ole Miss? I do. Do I think that James Madison can beat Oregon? Not a chance in hell. So Cinderella is in college basketball is not transferable to what we're doing now in the postseason here.
Agreed. It's funny. Just before, I had a interview with Oberlin College football coach. Name is John Pont. He is the grandson of John Pont, who is the last Indiana coach to lead them to a Rose Bowl. And he was saying how it's interesting watching a team like Indiana, who has had very little success ever, make these strides. And my question to you is, did Fernando Mendoza win the Heisman on Saturday, like with his performance against Ohio State, or is there still kind of room
I think so. No, I think so. I think he won it. The last word on college football poll was released today, Wednesday, as we record this. He had my vote. I mean, he played a terrific game. And again, as you and I have talked about before, one of the biggest things with my voting is how did you do in the biggest games? how'd you do when it mattered the most? And he did really well. So I know that there was some controversy, with the finalists that they had. I know there were some people who thought Jacob Rodriguez, a linebacker from Texas Tech, should have been there. He was a great player, but I think they got the finalists right, and I think they'll get the winner right.
And about Mendoza, it's funny when I look at him just from a NFL type of eye, there's a good chance that he will be the number one pick.
Sure.
And that is wild.
I'm always opposed to taking quarterbacks with the top pick, just because I think it's such a high risk. They need time to develop into real NFL quarterbacks. But I know that also just makes me antiquated because that's what we've done for the last 20 years.
As someone who follows the Las Vegas Raiders and has Geno Smith, perhaps the worst quarterback currently in the NFL, they might need to take a quarterback at every position, like every single spot they have in the draft. It is bad to watch.
It is.
When at least with Mendoza, he showed something that he didn't have at Cal, where you could see the tools in place at Cal, but this year he put it together.
When you said he showed something that he didn't have at Cal, I thought you were going to say a head coach.
That's true.
Justin Wilcox was never going to be confused with an offensive genius.
Ever.
No.
It's funny because it's his defenses would come up with big plays, but they also get torched constantly.
Yeah.
He was the ultimate feast or famine coach. He was the Rob Deere of coaching, where it's either going to be a home run or a strikeout.
Rob Deere, goodness gracious. Okay, I'll go along with that. I got nothing to refute that. He was living on the edge every season. We were always surprised when he was back at conference media days. Like, hey, look, Justin Wilcox survived another off season. That was until this year. They'd finally had enough. Ron Rivera, by the way, the GM of Cal football, was at the Nagurski. He received the Bronco Nagurski Legends Award, which basically is looking at guys who went on to a great career even after it's someone who won the award when they were a college player, which he did when he was at Cal, and then went on to a great career after that. And he had a great pro career. He had a really, really good pro career. Was a good coach with the Panthers. Last time they've been to the Super Bowl, was with Ron Rivera. He's the GM now at Cal, so he was there getting the Legends Award. So, as we talk about Cal and talking about guys in the NFL, and the Fansville sheriff was there. The sheriff of Fansville, Brian Bosworth, was there giving the keynote speech. There's one thing I can say about Boz's keynote speech. It was really, really long. It was really, really long. He went on to give highlights about each of the four players, which was nice. They were good, And then he went on to his theory of path, which the P, the A, the T, the H, that all stands for something. He went through all that. I don't remember what it was. I think I slipped into a coma for about 10 or 15 minutes. And it was weird because the Adam Zucker, the MC, Adam Zucker from CBS Sports, he's been the MC quite a few years in a row now. Great guy, does a great job with it. He keeps it light. He keeps it moving along. And then Boz went up there. Like I said, I'm pretty sure I slipped into a coma for a while. It was funny too because Zucker was sitting at our table with Steve Richardson, the executive director of the Football Writers Association. A couple folks that I met that night, don't know who they were. Bill Bender, myself, my wife, and Adam was just chatting with my wife like crazy, and he had gotten into Charlotte the night before, and He's talking about this restaurant that he loves to go to, and it's a neighborhood restaurant for us. Calle Sol,
Okay.
which is a mix of Peruvian and Asian,
Nice.
and but yet with a real Cuban tint to it. So it's interesting, but it's a great restaurant. Um, I often before he retired, I used to see Mark Packer from the ACC network there
Oh,
quite a
wow.
bit because he'd be in Charlotte for the ACC offices doing his show and at the studios there and whatever. Now he's retired. We don't see him there anymore. But so they were talking about that, and he was like, "Oh, all right, next time I'm in town, we're all going to Calle Sol." So he gets up on stage and he's going through his introductions and whatever, and says, "Hey, by the way, if you're over near table whatever, table 40, I think, say hi to Mitzi. We're gonna go to Calle Sol for dinner." you know, and great time. Calle Sol, love that place. So if you're in town, go there. And oh, by the way, make sure Mitzi gets the special program because there's an event program, and on the back of one of them, there's a sticker. And if you have the one with the sticker, you get the centerpiece off the table. And so he's like, make sure Mitzi gets it. And she's like holding hers up. He said, "Oh, look, you got it without." So he and my wife bonded, and so we got the centerpiece, which is the
Wow.
Nagurski helmet.
Wow.
So yeah.
That is
Oh, and
awesome.
and we got Jacob Rodriguez signed it after he won. So that was pretty
Wow.
cool.
That is
So
awesome.
by the way, replica helmet, don't put it on and try to play football. It's not meant for contact. So it'll go up in the memorabilia case you see, wrong shoulder, you see over there with all my other random signed helmets and things like that. So yeah, got that. Kind of cool, kind of fun. Hey, by the
Now,
way,
yes.
they have a silent auction before the dinner, and some very cool stuff, some very expensive stuff, but some very cool stuff, signed jerseys, and even not just all from college football, some from the NFL, a lot of Panther stuff because the event's in Charlotte. And I don't know why I feel the need to say this, but I took a picture and sent it to my college football group because I just felt the need to point out the Lou Holtz signed Notre Dame football had 0 bids. Nobody wanted Granny Holtz's signed football. Sorry, Lou. Nobody was interested in your stuff.
There was a Eric Dickerson SMU jersey up for bid of whatever. It was authenticated. And their first bid was like 7 grand. I'm like, oh, okay. I don't need that. Nope. And I was like, oh,
Wow.
but no, it's funny when you look at just how the CFP and how everything is.
Hmm.
It is going to lead into the transfer portal, which now
Right.
is always important. But there's gonna be so many names and so many quarterbacks. I've noticed there are a lot of quarterbacks, and one opening possibly. If I'm not sure if Nico Amaleava is going to leave UCLA. Has he left?
No,
Do you think he
no, not
will?
yet. No, I don't. I think Bob Chesney is going to put in some effort to keep him there and work with him because regardless of the results, there's a talent that is there. Um, the results were a mix of having no offensive line, no running game, and Jerry Neuheisel trying to kind of, I guess no pun intended, jerry rig an offensive system, that would get you somewhere. So, but you didn't have the talent around him. So I think he's going to stay. Look, moving back home to Southern California was a big deal to him in leaving Tennessee. He didn't leave Tennessee for more money because he got less money. He got less NIL money than he did at Tennessee. It was mostly about moving home and being closer to family. So I think he stays. Now Sam Levitt from Arizona State is leaving. He's
Yeah.
going into the portal, which I think is unfortunate. Look, I'm for the portal. Every other student on campus gets to transfer whenever they want. You can't legally deprive athletes just because they're athletes. But it's unfortunate because Sam Levitt at Arizona State turned into a great story for a couple of years.
Yeah.
But I'm going to say this about Kenny Dillingham. I'm going to say this, man. He is young. He's sometimes overly energetic. Sometimes he steps in it with the things he says. But Kenny Dillingham is leaving Sam Levitt on the team for the bowl game if Sam Levitt wants to play, if he hasn't found another home yet, which I don't remember the date that Arizona State is playing. The portal opens January 2nd. I don't remember the date that ASU is playing, but anyone, and this isn't just Levitt, that Dillingham's policy is if you are in the portal, but we're going to keep you on your scholarship here until you formally leave to go somewhere else and withdraw from school. You want to stay on the team? This is your home. It's your team. He said, this is the 2025 team. These are the 2025 players. So he's keeping them on there if they want to. Props to him, man, because it would be really easy. I know me being petulant, since that's our word of the day. I'm the coach. I'm like, dude, you're leaving. Clean out your locker like yesterday, But he's handling it differently, and this is why the players like him as much as they do.
I had in my I have a group chat with just a couple of friends who are fans, and I have a friend who is another diehard Carolina fan, and swears up and down that next year is going to be a year of Bill Belichick. As someone who has followed Carolina since Lawrence Taylor was a senior, I was a 5, but still, Bill Belichick now with James Franklin in the ACC, that pushes
Right.
Carolina back even further.
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. And you look at the early signing period that Franklin had at Virginia Tech, it was epic. I mean, Virginia Tech was going into the last week and a half, like in close to last in the ACC in their signing class. And now they are right there in the top 3 or 4 of the conference. They moved up 50 spots nationally. I mean, it was a great signing period. We said when they hired him, home run hire for Virginia Tech. Home run hire. There aren't very many home run hires. There really are not. This was one because he wins 9-10 games a year there. They're going to put the statue of him right there next to Frank Beamer. It will be phenomenal. And so, yeah, it's Virginia Tech is now a team to watch in the ACC again.
One of the coolest things I've seen doing what we do in a very long time is how Franklin hired Brent Pry, which is his predecessor, as the defensive coordinator, and just to hear the emotion in Franklin's voice when he's mentioned how much Brent Pry means to him, and it just as not just as a coach, but as a friend, and be able to respect his ability. Listen, I mean, James Franklin, in the end, he succeeded, just by getting away from whatever Penn State is trying to be. I know they hired Matt Campbell, and that's a choice.
It's a good hire.
Yeah. It's a good hire. It's a hard job. It's a tough job.
Yeah, sure it is. Sure it is. Look, Campbell coached for 10 years at Iowa State. Did well. 72 wins in his time. I think it's 72 and 52, 53, something like that. And if you can do that at Iowa State where there are not tons of resources, where it's challenging recruiting, the finances aren't what they are, elsewhere. I don't know, because we all wondered what was taking Penn State so long. And clearly, if a coach is still coaching, you're going to leave it until the end. I mean, there was that last week where all these coaches got hired, Chesney going to UCLA and so on, Sumrall and all these guys going into the last week of the season. But you're not going to hire a coach from another school in the middle of October, for next year. So I get it, and it's a good fit. And I think if you can do what you did at Iowa State with limited resources, I think you can have a good run at Penn State. Now, again, Same question as it was going to be for anybody who took the job. Are you ready for Oregon and Ohio State and Indiana and Michigan? Man, it is a tough road. But year one, and if you look at Penn State's schedule, they don't play Ohio State. They don't play Michigan. They don't play Indiana. So it's set up for a good first year for Matt Campbell. And it's going to be a lot of work because their recruiting class took the opposite trajectory of Virginia Tech's. They plummeted. They wound up, depending upon which service you look at, they wound up near last in the country. Players bailed out because there was no coach named before the signing period.
And that falls on the AD for.
Sure it does.
I mean, that's one of those things. And a little Dion news. So Brendan Marion, who was the offensive coordinator at UNLV, who's been coach at Sacramento State, is now the Colorado offensive coordinator. Brendan Marion is this guy. He is the guy who came to Sac State, ran his mouth constantly, pissed off every Big Sky coach in the world who's like one of the most humble conferences and calmest coaches you ever want to meet, angered all of them.
Yep.
And now is going to be Dion's offense. His offense is interesting, but it's at least Dion, I think, to his credit, Dion kind of realizes this. You just can't be hiring your NFL buddies to be coaches.
Here's my question about Marion going. Is he the heir apparent to Dion? Is he next in line? Because look, man, Dion had a brutal year, first year ever as a college coach without his son, without Travis Hunter. He's got the health issues. I don't know. I don't know. I'm not projecting he's quitting. I don't have any insight on that. But if Dion can't do this long term, Marion's got the coaching resume, maybe not the greatest personality. And I think after you've hired Dion and created, the splash with the sold out stadiums and the merchandise sales and all of that, you're going to look, the fan base is going to be who? But maybe he's got a year to run his offense and take over, as need be. I noticed that it's a pretty basic contract that he got. So, step up for him. Hey, by the way, speaking of contract, did you see Lane Kiffin's contract has become public now because LSU is a public university? Oh, goodness gracious sakes alive. $91 million over 7 years.
Jeez.
But it's the little things that are in the contract which catch your attention. If he has to sell his house at Ole Miss for a loss just to unload it while he's, the whole family is up and moved to Baton Rouge, LSU will cover the difference. LSU paid his $3 million buyout to get out of Ole Miss. That's not uncommon. Ole Miss LSU is honoring the Ole Miss contract for the postseason. In other words, LSU is giving Lane Kiffin a bonus for every game Ole Miss wins in the playoff because it was his team, and that's what his Ole Miss contract said. Look, man, you already spent the $3 million to get him out of the contract. Isn't that good enough? But he's going to get a bonus from LSU for every game Ole Miss wins in the postseason.
He has 4
I like
years.
that contract.
That is a wild contract. He has 4 years to win a national title, or else
he'll be fired.
And
LSU, even if he wins a national title, he'll be fired. Ask Ed Orgeron. Ask Les Miles.
Because Lane eventually is now they're in the honeymoon phase down in Baton Rouge. Lane's he's gonna grind on somebody's nerves, the wrong person, and it's not gonna be fun for him. The first time they lose to
Mississippi State,
good one, or Arkansas, people will be at Lane's door looking for questions. It's as good of a job as LSU is. It's an impossible job in spots because the standards are so high.
They're unreasonably high. This is the SEC, man. This is Georgia's conference now. Has been for a few years. You're not Georgia. You were never going to be with Brian Kelly either, but you're not Georgia. You're not Bama. You're not even Ole Miss right now. And it's gonna take a few years for Lane to get there. And by then you start grumbling with impatience.
Staying in the SEC, I know that, you know,
Mhm.
Auburn former wide receiver, Perry Thompson jumped in the portal because he was a four-star recruit too, and he didn't get the ball for 2 years because he had to deal with Hugh Freeze's offense. And to see Auburn alums, some of the donors and fans, uh, question Perry Thompson's lack of loyalty. The man stayed an extra year hoping that he would get the ball. He never
Right.
got the ball.
Right. Yeah.
And
This wasn't on him. This was, and even though you've got a new coach and you want to tell players to hang in there and whatnot, it's tough because when things haven't worked out for literally a couple of years now for someone who's very talented, they want fresh scenery, man. They want a fresh start somewhere. They've got limited time in college ball. And, look, I'd love for there to be restrictions on the portal, but I also know every time the NCAA tries it, they get their head handed to them in federal court because they don't have the antitrust protections that they would need to make these rules. And you also, like I said earlier, every other student on campus gets to transfer whenever they want. It's legally impossible to restrict athletes just because they're athletes. Um, so it's if you make them employees, then you can restrict them, and nobody wants to see them become employees. The So he wants a fresh start. These guys who transfer and the fan bases complain about their loyalty. You know what? If you were them, you'd be doing the same thing. So settle down, keyboard warriors.
exactly. Now, lastly, we discussed a little bit of the Lakers, where
Mhm.
talking to folks in and around the NBA, they were saying that one of the teams that Giannis Antetokounmpo is looking towards is possibly joining up with Luka in LA once LeBron James finally retires. He doesn't. He loves Milwaukee, but he knows that this is as good as it'll get, and
Mhm.
he sees LA as a chance. And
Mhm.
from kind of estimation, they would have to give up probably 2 or 3 number 1 picks for Giannis.
Do it. Do it.
I agree.
Yeah,
'Cause
you
they
do it.
become the instant favor then. They become instant favor in the West.
Absolutely. For a player of that quality, you absolutely do it. Um, it's funny. I was watching an old 30 for 30. Oh goodness. I've got to say the thing's probably 10 years old. I was watching it in the middle of the night one night, one of those lack of sleep nights, and I had it on while I was working. And it was about the Lakers and Celtics rivalry
Yes,
and
I've
the
seen the movie.
Magic and Bird rivalry. And it was phenomenal. It had Ice-T and who am I trying to think of? The guy who was in New Kids on the Block and was on the
Donnie
TV show
Wahlberg.
Blue Blood. There you go, Donnie Wahlberg. Thank you. They narrated from the Boston side and from the Lakers side. And it was funny. I laughed because you talk about these contracts and what you got to give up. And after I think it was year three, yeah, I think it was year three, Jerry Buss gave Magic Johnson an unheard of contract, $25 million for 25 years. Now, of course, he was never going to play 25 years, but it becomes a personal services contract after he retires and you work for the organization. But I just laughed. 25 million for 25 years. We got college football coaches who are going to get to that 25 million per year, at some point while you and I are still around. And Magic was like, oh, I never imagined that kind of contract could ever exist. Um, and we talk about the contracts now. If you gotta dig deep into your resources to get Giannis, you do it. You absolutely do it because he's still young enough to be a factor for a lot of years to come.
I was talking to my son about being a fan of basketball in the '80s, and he was asking me, he's like, as a Knicks fan, Magic made the game fun. It was fun.
Sure he
It was
did.
like, oh, I'm such,
Sure he did.
and you never sat down and realized that you're watching a game that took 2.5 hours because the Lakers style of play was just it was entertaining. Like they're playing the Denver Nuggets. Dan Issel is running up and down the court slowly, and you have like a 135, 134 game, but it was fun. It was like, oh, this is entertaining. And it's just one of those
Oh
things
yeah.
that it was different than the fast pace it is now, where fast pace is now, people don't play defense now.
No, it's an individual fast-paced game now. Magic made it a team game because of
Ex-
his ability to dish the ball and see the entire court. I realize there's an entire generation or two behind me who has never seen Magic other than just a guy who shows up on TV for interviews or he's sitting at the Dodger game as part owner of the Dodgers. And you see a lot of guys who have great individual talents. So I realized to that group, I'm going to sound like the old guy. There has never been a point guard in the league like Magic before or since.
no,
You have to start with the fact he was a point guard who was 6'9" and could run the court like a deer and could deliver the ball I mean, I've seen Magic, and you can just still Google highlights or look on YouTube or whatever. And, Magic hit a pinpoint bounce pass from mid-court, one-handed, just firing it so it bounces to the top of the key and gets to Cooper or Byron Scott or whatever. Um, there's one that shows up on all the highlights of him being on his rear end. He fell down going after the ball and passing it between someone's legs to Kareem underneath, for a dunk. The things he did with the ball were just staggering. Um, so yeah, he absolutely, man. He and Larry Bird, who absolutely hated each other back then. Um, they did the famous Converse commercials with Magic showing up in a limo in French Lick, Indiana, and doing that commercial together. They did not like each other back then. Um, and they obviously became the closest of friends afterward. But that rivalry was intense. By the way, it was funny because they showed the print ad for those Converse All Stars, and they came in the different colors for the different teams. Do you remember who the New York Knicks player was who was in that ad?
Bernard King.
There you go, Bernard King. Yeah, they had Mark
Yes,
Aguirre, who was with the Mavs back then. They had Isaiah Thomas. They had Kevin McHale. Yeah, yeah,
I remember
Bernard
that
King.
because Bernard King was a scorer until he got hurt. I remember Magic for the simple fact that there'll there'll never be a player, a point guard of that size with
Right.
that just feel for the game and the ability to find open teammates. Just the vision
Yep.
is
Yeah.
ridiculous.
Yeah.
And
Yeah. No, no, it's
actually,
true. But by the way, I remember just saying, I'm old school enough. I remember Bernard King playing at the University of Tennessee
he
with Ernie
the
Grunfeld.
Grunfeld, the
They
Bernie
called
and
it
Ernie
the Ernie
show,
and Bernie show. Yeah, exactly. Exactly. And then of course Grunfeld became what was he, GM or president of the Knicks?
both.
Both. Okay. All right. All right.
And it's with Magic and just being able to be a rookie and start at center when Kareem was injured and score what 45 points, or like 40 points, something like that.
42 points in the championship game against the 76ers.
Having
Jump
to
center. Yeah,
yes,
jump center to start the game.
and just playing like down low, like you don't see that every day. But so
No, absolutely not.
what's coming up on
The
last? Sorry, I'll go ahead.
No, 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 go ahead because I may not be able to pull off what I think I can. Um, so last word on college football is, and I will tell you what I was looking for. And oh, wait, there it is. I'm going to see if I can get this in the camera. Um, just before, maybe days before we left LA, my wife and I were eating breakfast at one of our favorite West Side places, and I looking out the window, we're sitting at a window table, and I'm like, oh my goodness gracious, look who's coming in. And she gasped. And he was so friendly about everything. Let's see if I can do this correctly. There you go. There's
Wait,
Magic.
what?
Yep.
That's funny.
Yeah. There's Magic. Just hanging out, taking pictures. Obviously, masks were still a
Yes.
thing back then when you went into a restaurant. Yeah, there's Magic. Just completely gracious guy.
Magic
So
City.
last word on college football. You go to lastwordonsports.com. You click on the college football link. We've got Instagram, we've got Facebook, we've got Twitter, we've got Blue Sky. I am at Tony Bruin on both of those. We've got our last Heisman poll. We've got some kind of a little bit of post-mortem on some of the teams who aren't making the postseason play. We're starting bowl previews already. Because, dude, we got the Celebration Bowl Saturday, right? The great HBCU setup game. And so on Thursday, we'll have that preview up. And we will be covering every single bowl game as we do every year. We will have a preview and a post-game report from, you ought to see the spreadsheet that our senior editor, Maggie Yarnell, set up. She's the one who manages this. And it's crazy. We will have something for every single bowl game. So we're the place to go for that postseason coverage.
And as always, thank you so much for joining me on this episode of the Ad Drop Podcast.
All right, man. Be well.